Hi, my name is Emily Ewing, back again with the lovely Carol Hodge, and this is Ewing and Hodge Chat, where we talk about all things music. We are honoured to be joined by our legendary guest who has had an incredible career playing guitar and touring with iconic artists Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck, released her own solo albums, written music books, had a guitar residency in Cirque du Soleil 2011, does courses, guitar clinics and masterclasses, plus continues to share her talent all over the world. It's the one and only Jennifer Batten!
Yay!
Howdy!
Yeah. Well, my first question, and it's kind of like two in one. What drew you into wanting to learn and play the guitar, and how did that then lead you into a career in music?
Well, I was 8 years old and my sister got a guitar and I didn't, so I was jealous. So that's a huge motivator when it's right in your face. But my father always had jazz playing whenever he was home. That was the audio backdrop to everything. And then combine that with the Beatles invading America. The British invasion was a huge thing in my town. So every 45 that came out, every LP, we would all gather at somebody's house and listen to the records over and over again. So that set the trajectory. And finally, when I was 8 years old, my dad got me a guitar for Christmas. And I started lessons right away and never stopped, basically.
I love that. And then how did you know that you wanted a career in music?
I announced to my mother when I was 12 years old, and the only reason that I remember is I said, this is what I want to do for a living. And she warned me that it was a very competitive business. And that kind of shocked me to get any pushback at all. And that's why I remember it. And oftentimes when, I've got canceled flights or missed connections, I think I should have listened to her.
Did that spur you on more at the time because she told you, well, it's going to be difficult? Did that light something inside you, or?
I don't know. I'm sure subconsciously there was something there, but my love of music obviously was stronger than her warning.
We like that. I mean, obviously there's things with social media now, but when you very first began your career in music, do you see a difference from then and now with how musicians are? Yeah,
I mean, when I started, and even when I got the Michael Jackson tour in 1987, people were still buying music, and now they can get it all for free. So the revenue for musicians has to come from other places, like recording lessons, doing live lessons or one-on-one Zoom lessons, writing books, doing workshops around the world, and playing with a lot of different bands. That's how I've been able to keep my head afloat.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I think it is we class it as like a CV career now, where you have to do lots of different jobs. It's not just the one gig anymore. Or
and the whole social media thing is a game changer as well. I've discovered so many amazing players on TikTok that are just bonkers great, and they may never have a record deal. People aren't even looking for record deals anymore for the most part because it's just a loan from the bank. And there has to be so many things in line, like promotion department and touring. And a lot of people are just doing it all themselves, which is a ridiculous amount of work. But I could see if I was 20, I would be doing that. I'd be posting stuff every day. And at this point, I remember reading, I think in Premier Guitar, there was one of those bold headlines from Guthrie Govan that said, "I don't want to spend the rest of my life making videos of myself." And I go, here, because it's a lot of work. I mean, it can be a full-time job, and I was doing that during COVID. Couldn't work, couldn't play live, so everybody became a YouTube star temporarily, and it's a ridiculous amount of work to really get almost nothing back. You get, oh, great, I got a few more likes. That doesn't pay your mortgage. So it's a different world.
It's quite hard to see the connection, isn't it, between, I mean, obviously, you get paid as a musician to play a gig. You get paid when somebody buys a physical copy of your album. But with things like TikTok and YouTube, it's quite difficult to see the connection between views and kind of success almost.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily come up with asses in seats, as they say. Yeah. I mean, once you get to maybe 500,000 or 1 million viewers, I think people can see more people starting to show up. But I don't have 1 million subscriptions on YouTube. So it's just a different world. I kind of wish I had come up later, because when I was coming up, especially in the Jackson thing, you could count the number of women playing guitar on one hand that were actually out there actively doing it and soloing and that kind of stuff. And now they're looking for people. It's a kind of a trend now. And there's some super badass women out there playing too, for sure.
Who was there when you were younger? What female guitarists were an influence on you?
There was a jazz guitar player in New York named Monette Sudler. And when I was at guitar school, we had an assignment to transcribe a solo by someone and play it with a band. And that's back in the day. I mean, that was the third class Musicians Institute ever had, back when it was GIT, only guitar, and they had to hire drums and bass to play with us. And so I was looking for women, and back then it was her and Emily Remler, Emily was just a monster player. But I transcribed Monette's solo on something or other, and there just wasn't a lot out there. So it was mostly men that I listened to, and still is.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've got to ask you about Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And you're playing with the King of Pop. Did you feel any pressures when you first got the job and going on tour with him and playing in front of such huge audiences? Did you feel any pressure?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
But the pressure was to do a good job for him. And we rehearsed so many hours for so many weeks. I remember the day of the first show was in Tokyo. And I remember being really anxious about it, because I know what it's like to, be playing along with tracks in your bedroom or playing with the band at rehearsal. And the show is a crapshoot. It really depends how you're hearing things, your mental state. So many factors can ruin it for you. So I didn't know how I would feel, because I had never played for more than 1,500 people, and that was rare at that point. And honestly, once the downbeat came, it was a piece of cake. Thankfully, because we had put in all that rehearsal memory. So we had gone over it so many times, and had costume rehearsals towards the end before we flew. So it was really comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched his documentary, This Is It. And I know that's just like a small glimmer of what really goes on, but like you said, in rehearsals and whatnot. But his work ethic is incredible, and a perfectionist, perhaps. Like, I don't know if that's a bit unfair, but...
Well, he called himself a perfectionist for sure. And he would put in so many hours. I mean, he would rehearse all day long and then go home at night and look at the videotapes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm way too lazy to do something like that.
That's hardcore, definitely. Why do you think you got the job in that particular band?
I never asked him, but 20 years after, there's a guy named Steve Swirsky that was doing a documentary on female guitar players, and he contacted the guy that videotaped my audition, and that's the first time I saw it in 20 years, or saw it at all. And there was a piece of paper in there also where Michael had made notes, and next to my name he put a star and wrote "great" with exclamation points. So he liked something he was hearing. Plus, when I got there, the only thing I was told was to play some funky rhythm. And so I did that. I had been teaching funk rhythm at GIT at that time. And then I started random soloing and two-hand tapping. I did there's a song on my first record I did a solo for a song called Giant Steps by John Coltrane. That was all a worked out two-hand tapping thing. So I played that. And I had also been playing Beat It in a cover band for several years. So I ended the audition with that. So obviously he knew he needed that because he played that every tour. It was such a big hit. So I checked a few boxes for him. And when I got the call, it wasn't like, bam, you got the gig. It was, Michael's interested. Now go down and play with the band, see how it works out. And they never told me I had the gig. It's just I canceled other things week after week after week and eventually had a passport and a ticket to Tokyo.
And there we are. I was going to ask you as well, I mean, getting such like a massive job like that, did you face sexism from people being a female guitarist?
Yeah, a lot of jealousy. And, as far as sexism, it's only, I'm sure a lot of things were said behind my back that I never heard, thankfully. Yeah, it's not so much in that gig. There were a few subtle things that were said, but I can't even remember them now. But after that, okay, that's in my resume now. And now there's a lot of guys that have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've had an incredible career, so I've
been pretty blessed. Yeah, in my mind, I got the two best gigs in the world from, going from Michael Jackson to Jeff Beck. It's night and day, different kinds of shows, and after that, you can retire. I mean, mentally.
What were the main differences in terms of, not so much obviously in terms of musical contrast, but in terms of like vibe between the two camps?
Well, Michael's show was a show with capital letters. It was worked out where it had to be this song and then this song, costume changes, pyro cues, total theater where the music was only the foundation. And then he built a visual show on top of that with bombs and lasers and video. And Jeff's show was more about the music. I mean, he might have had a few videos, but he doesn't dance. None of us danced. There's not a lot to look at visually compared to a Michael Jackson show. But and Jeff, he could change the order of songs, and it's not going to endanger anybody from pyro cues being missed. And he liked, where Michael would want things to be the same every night, reliable and the same, Jeff wanted things to change to make things exciting because it was more of an improvisation show.
I've actually seen Jeff Beck live back in 2008 or 9, and that is incredible. I mean, the standard of musicians that he plays with.
Yes.
That's on the quality of his performing's like.
In my mind, he's the best there is. And I just saw him this year playing in Texas with ZZ Top. And, he's almost 80 years old. And he's still the best there is. He hasn't lost a thing.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to ask you about your costumes that you wore on stage from time to time. Because you said, was that to go with like Michael Jackson's visual?
Yeah, well, he hired an artist to draw up a look for all of us, including hair, makeup, and 3 different costumes. And then they hired makeup and hair people to make that painting come to life, and then hired wardrobe people to take measurements and make the costumes come to life. And there were some problems, I tell you. The costumes looked incredible. In fact, they spent $1 million on clothing, just clothing for the band performers. The dancers, I think all 4 of them split out of their pants because they weren't made for dancing. They weren't stretch material.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So, that was an unforeseen wardrobe malfunction. Sadly, but I mean, there was so much effort. Michael wanted it to be the greatest show on earth, and it was. He wanted people's minds to be blown at every turn, and we'd always sign secrecy forms that we wouldn't let it out before the show got on the road, because he wanted everything to be a surprise. So when the journalists were there for the first show, their mind was blown too, and they couldn't be writing stuff down fast enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one costume that one video, VHS, some quite old, where you've got like these big antlers.
Yeah.
Or like they're like a leaf, and I was just like, gosh, to play with how you play and wearing that's like.
Well, that would have been for Beat It, and such a huge hit. We did it every single tour, and he didn't want to have the same costumes. The first time I had it was so hot. It was a one-piece jumpsuit that was black with little dots on it that would hit the lights. Mm. And then there was a headdress that was strapped onto my head that had fiber optic lights that would pop out the top and fiber optics on the guitar. They'd turn out the lights, and you'd see this moving light being going across the stage. The second time they had two costumes, and one was a dragon, and the dragon was form fit to me to have a claw over my shoulder, and that thing was so heavy. People said, you look really unhappy. And I thought my back was going to break. It was just awful, trying to play the Beat It solo, which is a challenge, and then having a dragon on your back. That thing only lasted, I don't know, 2 or 3 shows. And thankfully they had a backup plan, which was the antlers, which were foam rubber and super lightweight and also had fiber optic lights in them. So that's where that was. I can't even remember.
I just got images of you slowing down when you're halfway through the solo because it's so heavy and you can't play anymore.
These are the things they don't warn you about in music school, I tell you that much.
They don't prepare you for that. I think Carol's got a guitar question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wondering, I mean, obviously you do sort of guitar tuition and videos and etc. Have you got any particular advice for quite advanced guitarists who've been playing for quite a long time? What do you think, in your experience, they generally need to sort of work more on?
There's the whole thing of stage presence. If people are coming to see you and sitting in the audience, they're staring at you for a good 90 minutes. And if you're looking at your shoes the whole time, it's going to be super boring. They might really dig the music, but compared to somebody that's really engaging with the other players on the stage and making eye contact and maybe trading solos, those little bits go a really long way. In fact, I remember I went to see Pat Metheny many, many years ago, and it was his American Garage tour. And the only thing I remember about the show this many years later is there's one song, I think it was the title track, where everybody in the band put on sunglasses. And it was, minimum theatrics, but I remember it 40 years later. It's kind of crazy, little bits of going to see other shows and seeing what you can incorporate. Most of us are not great dancers, and we're not going to put dance routines like Beyonce in our shows. And well, actually, that's 100% why I have a solo show that's in sync with films. Because after I had played with Jeff Beck, I thought, oh, God, what's next? I already played, my bucket list is done. I thought, okay, now I want to do my own music. And it's not going to be enough for me to go out and play with tracks, which I had done plenty doing guitar clinics. So I came up with the idea of making videos and playing in sync with that. And I've been doing that for maybe 14 years now, because I'm extremely aware that after 5 minutes, you've pretty much seen me, And I don't personally think it's all that entertaining to watch a guitar player's fingers, and I don't sing. So I was very aware there had to be another element of entertainment. And because I pulled that together, I can have little kids watch the whole show and be engaged, where if it was only music, they'd be asleep.
Mm. Do you have any advice for upcoming musicians as well?
Yeah, just, I think it was the worst in the 80s and 90s, maybe. People just wanted to be famous. It's like the old American Idol thing. I just want to be famous and have millions of people love me. And without the foundation of, years and years and years of just playing live just because you want to play and getting your stage chops together and getting to the point where you can pretty much handle any situation without having a meltdown, it takes time. So for young musicians that are doing their thing on TikTok or whatever, keep doing it. But also, there are other humans out there, you know. And every time you learn a new song, every time you play with other players, you're growing. And to not do that and only put yourself on YouTube, you're leaving out a huge part of growth.
Because there's that thing, isn't there, of the stereotype of the bedroom guitarist, which I guess is what you get a lot on TikTok and YouTube. Literally, just somebody could be virtuosic, but they're just, if they don't know how to play with other musicians, that's, like you say, it's a big sort of gap, isn't it, in skill? So,
indeed, yeah. There's no substitute for getting out there and playing with people.
Yes, it's interesting you say that, because I was actually watching something on Netflix yesterday. It's a documentary series called This Is Pop. And there's a last episode about the Brill Building. And Linda Perry, who's a songwriter for anyone that doesn't know, she talks about social media and the musician. And she says that's kind of what's missing now, is chemistry between getting into a rehearsal room with other musicians. Because you don't quite get that with Instagram and Snapchat, I believe that she says, you know.
Yeah, and the thing of why so many people write with partners, it just brings an element and an energy that you can't pull out of the hat by yourself. So I know AI is trying to replace all of us, but for the time being, we need other human beings. We're social beasts.
Very true. I mean, what are your upcoming plans for 2023? Anything we can look forward from you?
You know, this last year, it's strange. I've done so many things, and actually, I got I use an app called TripIt that keeps track of my flights and my hotels and stuff. And they sent out this thing for the first time where they collected all the data for everybody and said, you've flown this many miles since you've been with us. It's over 1 million miles since 2009 that I've flown. And it says you could have circled the globe 48 times. So, so I've done a whole lot of different things, guitar festivals and playing with different bands. And in November, I played with a trio for the first time in all over Europe that I want to do next time. In fact, I'm editing a promo film because we videoed it, so I hope to do more dates with them. But also this last year, I've played with 8 different Michael Jackson tributes from different countries.
Wow.
It's crazy. And I have to do a lot of work because they all sing in different keys, and a lot of the music is in different forms, and they'll do medleys. And so I really have to study up on each one before I do it. And there will be some of that next year. I don't know how much, but I got that. And I'm working on, I do videos for truefire.com. That's lesson videos. And I got plans to do 2 or 3 more because it's been about 7 years since I've done anything for them. So I need to get back to work because I think I have a few months off. I'm not sure about that. I'm waiting to hear about gigs in Mexico.
Oh, well, that sounds very exciting.
Do you have any stories about being any moments in your career when you've really felt that you're a woman in the music industry and that experience is different to being a man in the music industry? I know you said we mentioned sexism earlier, but is there any sort of stories that you can think of?
Yeah, I'll keep it anonymous, but there was one band where I was designated to be the musical director. And although the star was the one that chose me, the other guys in the band had a real problem with it, where the star would call me with changes that he wanted made before rehearsal, as we'd get there an hour or 2 before the star would come in. And it was just, there's a thing, especially when you're in bands like Michael Jackson or, big bands like that, certain people are going to want to be near the star. And it was a case with this too, and I was aware of it. And, if we had a couple cars that were leaving the gig, I would be sure to have somebody that wasn't me be next to the star so they could all get star time. And I heard that about Madonna's band too. There was, there's almost a competition to be their friend, which is, it's just a strange dynamic that I tend to stay away from. But, I don't know. It's really frustrating to be in that spot. And I decided from then on, I never wanted to be in a position where I couldn't fire people. Because the vibe on stage is everything. If people aren't getting along, I mean, yeah, you can plod through it, but you also have a lot of hours on the bus or the van. And if it's not happening, it just is spirit sucking. So, yeah, getting respect from others can be an issue.
And you have to enjoy who you're working with as well.
What's that?
You have to enjoy who you're working with as well. Like you said, vibe and...
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. Otherwise, it's like every gig is like, ugh, when is this tour over?
Yeah. Which is the opposite of what you want. It's supposed to be a bit of a magical job, really, isn't it? You don't want it to feel like a day at the office that you don't want to go to.
Yeah. I think there's always a power struggle with any group of strangers that gets together. People are pushing to see who's in charge and who will be pushed out of the way and that kind of thing. And I just sit back and observe it and do my job, basically.
Good advice.
Yeah, we just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today and talking with us. And
Sure.
Of course, I'll link Jennifer Batten's website so you can find out all about her, how legendary you are and your classes and everything you have coming up as well. And well, thank you for joining us. So it's been a real
It sounds
honor.
good. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.